It's like that. Welcome back to another episode of Survival Time. We finna get into how the crack epidemic affected LA in the 80s. Shouts out to Warren Cowley because he did his little research on this. I didn't. I really wanted to react to this because I want to see what his perspective is, because you get a lot of different sides and you get a lot of different stories as far as like drug connections and stuff like that, especially with the real Rick Ross and stuff. Like, he was really speaking on as far as how gang culture expanded and how it separated a lot of shit that wasn't originally separated at first. And it caused a lot of war and bloodshed between two sides over like money and disputes and stuff like that. So we finna see what's up, because he was also speaking on like how niggas started being able to buy certain guns and shit. So I really feel like that was another thing that was a key thing in the war between Crips and Bloods was the guns. They was able to get Max and AKs instead of just having handguns and 380s and shit like that. So let's see what's up.
Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cowley. Now, the city of Los Angeles is an area rooted in culture, soul, and survival. The area has produced world-changing artists to athletes, activists, and movements. But beginning in the early 1980s, something arrived that would reshape the whole area, and that would be crack cocaine. What started off as a small street rumor quickly turned into one of the most devastating public health disasters in American history. With just a few years, entire blocks fell apart. Between 1983 and 1989, crack-related homicide rates in Los Angeles increased over 200%, with the LAPD reporting more than 800 drug-related killings annually by the end of the decade. Drug arrests in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods in Los Angeles tripled, and by 1990, nearly 60% of all LAPD drug arrests involved Black residents. Even though Black people were less than 13% of the city's total population, these numbers weren't just statistics. They were families, kids, cousins, and neighbors being taken away. It wasn't just numbers, it was trauma. It was families breaking apart, and it was kids losing childhood overnight. It was a whole community stuck between survival and destruction. For teenagers in Los Angeles, life changed by the moment crack hit the blocks. For teenagers living in Los Angeles during the crack explosion, life changed almost instantly. Childhood became something you watched over kids in other neighborhoods enjoyed. By the mid-1980s, 1 in every 3 Black teenagers in Los Angeles County lived below the poverty line. Nearly half of all youth surveyed in Los Angeles reported seeing drug activity on their blocks every single day. Schools in Los Angeles began to lose hundreds of students. Between 1985 and 1990, an average attendance dropped between 20 to 30% in most Los Angeles schools. Truancy rates increased over 50%.
I really want to say this real quick. This to me is the part of like time and era where niggas started to kind of grow up too fast and start trying to do big people shit. You feel me? You can't do adult shit like this, because when you young like this, 15, 16, stuff like that, you dropping out of school and you making this big decision. Back in the day, that was more rare. Like in the 60s and 50s, you had a few motherfuckers drop out every now and again and they'd turn into something different, you know what I'm saying? But when you doing that to hit the streets and, you know what I'm saying, you just do bullshit, it really don't benefit you in the long run. It really actually fuck you up more. And I believe this is where you start to have motherfuckers become illiterate more, and you start having motherfuckers just getting caught more up in the system. I really hate that this is really where we start to fall off as a people, because this is literally where everything falls off of Black people to me. We started to hit that rock bottom at that point.
Teachers reported alarming levels of emotional trauma in their students. Things like depression, anxiety, and grief. Kids who once rode bikes and played sports were now walking through alleys filled with broken glass, burnt foil, and addicts everywhere. Over 40% of Black teens reported seeing drug deals daily. These kids didn't get to grow up slow, they grew up fast. Imagine being 14 years old and watching your neighborhood transform overnight. You walk to school and you see addicts lined up on a block. Kids your age are ditching class, and police helicopters are circling your neighborhood. For many teenagers, their parents were battling addiction. Their older siblings joined gangs for protection, and their friends started disappearing, to jail, to violence, or just the streets. By the early 90s, the LA youth homicide rate hit 150 per 100,000. For comparison, that was 4 times higher than New York's youth murder rate, and 6 times higher than Chicago's at the time. For a teenager in Los Angeles, death wasn't a rare tragedy. It was something everyone accepted as a real possibility. For a teenager, everyday life meant survival, avoiding the wrong corner, watching for drive-bys, staying out the way when older gang members handle business, trying to keep your household together while your parents fought addiction inside their homes, or it was just damaged severely. The crack epidemic caused many parents' addiction rates to skyrocket. LA County reported an 800% increase in children placed into foster care during the late 80s, with the majority coming from South Central neighborhoods. Grandmothers suddenly became the full-time parents again. Teenagers often became the head of the household, and forced to take care of siblings because their mother or father was battling addiction or caught in an endless cycle of arrests and releases. Teenagers weren't just losing safety, they were losing guidance, structure, and hope. They learned adult survival skills long before they learned how to navigate adulthood. Teenagers weren't just kids anymore, they were caretakers, they were observers of trauma, and they were trying to stay alive in a world they never asked for. With so much instability, many teens turned to the streets for belonging, identity, protection, and money. Surveys from the era showed that over 40% of Los Angeles teens felt that joining the gang increased their chances of staying alive. To them, a gang wasn't just violence, it was a shield. It was family in a world where their actual family was falling apart. This was the environment. Teenagers grew up in a place where trauma felt normal. Police felt like enemies, and schools felt like chaos, and the streets felt like the only consistent force in their lives. Before the crack era, gangs in Los Angeles were mostly about neighborhood identity, including Crips, Bloods, Pirus, and SA gangs. But crack changed everything. It turned gang life into a business. Between 1980 and 1990, the estimated number of documented gang members in Los Angeles rose from 20,000 to over 60,000, a massive increase in just 10 years. By 1988, LA recorded over 1,000 gang-related homicides, the highest gang murder count ever documented in major US cities at the time. Some neighborhoods saw shootings almost every night. For gang members, the streets weren't just dangerous, they were unstable. Crack cocaine brought new money but also new enemies. Territories became worth killing over. Lookouts, runners, enforcers, and an organization the gangs became tighter.
This is where I was saying, like, children making adult decisions can be a wicked route, because when you have to fend for yourself as a child, you look at things in a certain way. You look at shiny shit as a way like, ooh, that look good, you feel me? Or you look at the easy route like it's the cool thing to do, when in reality the hard route would be the best thing for you to do. But as an adult, you can figure that out and you can navigate that because you've already been through certain trials and tribulations, or you've already been explained certain things or taught certain things, which is the thing that everybody's lacking around this point in time, which is even now to this day. Men are lacking a lot of structure and fucking discipline and understanding what life is. It's discipline. It's waking up every morning and doing the same shit over and over on routine until you get to where you're trying to go and navigate yourself the proper way. The gang violence, it never helps anybody, because at the end of the day, like I said in a million videos, it starts more retaliation upon more retaliation upon more retaliation. You might have lost somebody, and then you go take somebody else out. They lost somebody, so now they gonna come take somebody out. So now we losing more and more people, so that just adds on to the numbers that multiply on gang violence and gang members. Another thing that I want to touch on is just because like young niggas was touching so much money at that early, a lot of them niggas was doing life after that, after a while. Niggas be watching Power and thinking shit cool because you see Kanan and you see Tariq and all these niggas doing what they do. That shit ain't real, bro. In reality, niggas only like probably sold drugs when they get to that height, probably like 3-4 years at max, for the most part. Like 90 to 80% of these niggas. You got a few that probably lasted a little longer, but it ain't that many. And then for everybody who don't realize, like, when you buying shit, especially now, which make it harder to buy shit without like any type of background information as far as how you got the money. When you buying shit with like no real income or no real way to prove income, you have to give things over to people. You have to let people sign names on things and stuff like that. That's how a lot of people was getting finessed, and then it got broke by family members or friends or whatever by trusting them with things that they owned or had when they went to jail. And that's how a lot of shit got sold, and niggas is mad because they came back home and now they broke. Nothing about the crack epidemic really helped or healed or did anything for nobody, but everybody love to make it seem like the crack epidemic helped make millionaires, or it made all these geniuses, when we had all these geniuses and well-developed minds that really just needed guidance and information, and we was too lost to give the information. Adults at that time was too lost to give the information to the people that needed the most, which was the children. If we don't look out for our children, we are going to continue to be lost, because that's what leads the future every time. We might be God in the current present, but we got to realize these children need us the most, and this is really a prime example of children needing adults.
More structured and more heavily armed.
Weapons, including a submachine gun. This all happened in Los Angeles County within the past 36 hours. Murderous gang crime, fueled by the traffic in rock cocaine. From those same gangs, crack now flows northward to the Bay Area in enormous quantities. Tonight, in a special edition of Cover Story, News Center 4 reporter Bob Sirkin goes inside the drug pipeline and reports on the LA connection we constantly hear about, but rarely see.
This wave of drug-driven structure raised violence to unprecedented levels. Rival sets fought constantly, not just over disrespect, but over money, product, and territory. Gun availability skyrocketed. Los Angeles saw an influx of illegally trafficked firearms, many of which were military grade or imported through secondary markets. By the early 1990s, the ATF estimated that over 70% of the illegal guns in Los Angeles were connected to drug-related gun conflicts. Gang members had to live with constant threats, rivals trying to take over their drug spots, and police conducting violent sweeps. Big homies demanding loyalty, and young homies being forced deeper into the life. Many lost their close friends before turning 18, or lost their lives themselves. Funerals became normal. Mothers burying their sons became normal. They were dying before their mothers and parents did. In Los Angeles during the late 80s and the early 90s, a black male aged 15 to 24 had a higher chance of being killed than going to college. And it was the same all across Los Angeles, and it became the rest of the following cities across this nation. Even gang members who weren't involved in the drug sales still got swept into the chaos. You couldn't be neutral. Wearing the wrong color, standing on the wrong block, or even just being related to the wrong person could get you caught up. Gang members weren't born violent. Many were created by the environment, created by survival, and created by desperation. While the media often portrayed drug dealers as ruthless and heartless, the reality was far more complex. Many drug dealers were teenagers or young adults who came from extreme poverty. The average annual income for minorities in Los Angeles during the mid-1980s was under $18,000, and the employment in areas hovered between 20 to 30%, with some neighborhoods reaching 40% of unemployment. In a world with no jobs and failing schools, crack money looked like the only path to survival. A teenager could make up to $500 to $1,500 a night, and mid-level dealers could bring in tens of thousands a week. For many young men, this outcome wasn't about the luxury. It was about paying rent their parents couldn't afford, buying food for their siblings and themselves, and keeping the lights on. But the drug dealer's world wasn't glamorous. It was a trap. Dealers lived with constant paranoia. Police raids, robberies, rival dealers trying to take their corners, and addicts begging, crying, or scheming for more and more hit. During the peak of the crack epidemic, robbery rates increased 60%, many tied directly to drug disputes.
One thing he ain't touch on with that shit is the fact that you will have somebody jealous of something you got. Motherfuckers seeing you shining and shit like that. You might have friends that might be seeing you shining and shit like that. They want what you want and they don't know how to hustle or get to it like the same way you get into it. And then that's another thing too. Like I said, with the easy route, it's so much envy that comes with that, and you're not understanding that the hard route will always make you stronger. The hard route will always make you stronger. It's easy to die in these streets, but it's hard to live in this world, my nigga. Always keep that in mind, and I'm gonna keep repeating that in every video I do that's like this, because I need my niggas to see stuff like this. I need my youth to see stuff like this. I need my people to understand stuff like this. Like what he just said, as far as like just making money. Like, we be so focused on making money that we forget the traps that come with making money in certain ways. We forget what comes with all of the BS when we out here risking our lives for no real reason. Or even the advantage that older niggas is taking of younger men because they know they got some size or they got some clout or some credibility over them, however they want to put it. They the leader of the gang or whatever. They using that as a way to manipulate motherfuckers and get them to do things that they want them to do. But the thing is, that just lets me know the lack of leadership that you hold and the lack of mind frame that you got. You feel me? And you need to get away from niggas that's like that, because anybody that's putting you in such a situation where you risking your freedom, where you risking your life, and it's only for a couple $1,000, nigga, you more valuable than that. And you need to realize they don't have no value for you for real. So that's another thing I want to point out. And another thing I also want to point out is like what he's saying as far as like just your parents burying you before they bury you. You know what I'm saying? You should bury your parents, never your parents bury you. Always remember that also, because that's going to hurt most to them. But people don't want to acknowledge that. And I always try to point that out also, because my mama lost 2 kids. You know what I'm saying? I always try to let people know you don't want to see your moms out here hurt about you dying over no dumb shit.
The justice system wasn't equal. Crack and powder cocaine was chemically the same, but crack carried 100 times more punishment under the federal law. That meant the 19-year-old selling small rocks could get 10 to 15 years, while someone selling powder in Beverly Hills got probation. By the year 2000, 1 in 5 every black man in Los Angeles County had been incarcerated, many due to low-level drug sales or possession charges. Families lost fathers, brothers, uncles, and sons to prison, sometimes for decades. The damage was generational. Children grew up without parents, women were left to raise families alone, while poverty and trauma deepened. From 1980 to 1995, Los Angeles lost over 50,000 manufacturing jobs. Poverty climbed over 30%. The number of single-parent households doubled. Drug arrests in the black communities were 5 times higher than the white communities. It wasn't just drugs that hurt Los Angeles. It was policing, it was a lack of opportunities, and it was a systematic neglect. At the same time, public schools in Los Angeles suffered severe budget cuts. Schools in black neighborhoods had the highest student-to-teacher ratios and the lowest funding per child, and some of the highest suspension rates in the state. By the early 80s, dropout rates for black youths in South Central Los Angeles reached 45% in certain schools, and nearly 1 out of every 2 students. The lack of opportunity created breeding grounds for gangs, and the arrival of crack subcharged that environment. But instead of addressing poverty or providing resources, the government responded with punishment. The war on drugs declared in 1982 expanded heavily in the late 80s, poured billions into policing, but slashed budget treatment and housing and schools. Between 1985 and 1995, California prison budgets increased 600%, while funding for drug treatment programs only increased 12%. Los Angeles became over-policed but under-supported. During the crack era, LAPD introduced the military tactics, such as batter ram, also no-knock raids, and massive sweeps. Residents described nights where hundreds of officers were storming blocks, kicking down doors, arresting dozens of people at a time, including those who were never charged with any crime. Between 1984 and 1990, LAPD narcotics units made over 200 arrests in South Central alone, but less than 10% of those arrested were ever charged with trafficking. That means more than 90% were simply just caught in a storm. They were users, low-level offenders, or innocent residents. Los Angeles became a battlefield, not because of crime, but because of systems abandoned it. The explosion of addiction and violence happened in a vacuum left behind. During the late 80s, hospitals in Los Angeles reported an overwhelming surge in overdose-related emergencies. They saw an increase over 500% between 1983 and 1990. Nurses described nights where addicts were lined in the hallways, shivering, sweating, or screaming for help. The number of babies born with crack-related exposure, often referred to in the media as crack babies, jumped dramatically. LA County recorded nearly 12,000 cocaine-exposed infants between 1985 and 1990 alone. Many of these children entered foster care immediately because their moms were battling addiction and had no support.
I'm finna say this, but fuck this commercial. He was saying what he was saying as far as jobs and stuff like that, but it's like, how can we create jobs and opportunities when it's nothing but murders and robberies happening in these areas? How can we create jobs and opportunities when like all the jobs is leaving, the companies don't want to be there because of all of what's going on? And another thing is also, that's one of the biggest things we lacked at the time was resources and money. Young niggas needed jobs. These young men needed jobs. These young men needed another way, another site. But the thing is, I can't also put that on top of that because at the end of the day, I also know they're going to look at what's cool and what's not. And they're going to see a minimum wage job ain't paying as much as this nigga getting on the corner. So I'm not finna sit here and play, you know what I'm saying? I'm just going to be 100. I already know nobody really would have took them jobs 9 times 10. A few probably would have. And it might have saved a few, but it wouldn't have saved the majority that we needed to be saved because they would have been looking at who making the most money and what can I get the most money out of doing. Or what can I get the most profit out of just becoming? But like I said, it's harder to live in this world than it is to die in these streets, my nigga. You gotta make your choice wisely. You can't be out here fucking around like this because it ain't just you that it affect, bro. It's really not. And I keep trying to explain this to people. This village that we have and that we call our black community, we have to do better with taking care of because of the drugs that you selling, like you just seen already from what my man's is saying. It's affecting the families. It's affecting the fathers. It's affecting the mothers. It's causing addictions. It's affecting the babies motherfuckers is having. Like, people not stopping and thinking about this because they just want that profit. But we will kill. It just shows how quickly blacks will kill each other for $1 and not give a fuck because that's all that we focused on is the dollar. But money is the root of all evil. And once you let that control your actions and control your well-being, then you become a part of that root and you grow with that root. And either you're going to get chopped down or you're going to get buried alive. It's one of them two things that's going to happen to you. So always be cautious of what you're doing and understand that you can get money doing any fucking thing in this world. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do to get money. You don't have to sell drugs. You don't got to pimp. You don't got to do none of that. You can do whatever you want to do to get money, my nigga. It's 1,000,001 ways to get money. The thing we need is information and education, but we don't take it seriously enough to do these things and make these things an importance of what the fuck we doing in our own cities and communities.
Even though the crack epidemic began to cool down in the late 90s, the aftershock continued to shape Los Angeles to this very day. The war on drugs left behind deep scars that many have yet to heal from. By the mid-2000s, Los Angeles County had more than 250,000 people with drug convictions, with a large concentrated coming from South Los Angeles, known as South Central. These convictions made it nearly impossible to find housing, jobs, or loans. The loss of black home ownership was staggering between 1990 and 2020. Black home ownership in Los Angeles dropped over 40%, partly because these families lost their homes to their incarceration, or because parents battling addiction couldn't maintain mortgages or pay rent. This displacement contributed to gentrification, something residents still fight today. As we step back from individual neighborhoods and personal stories, it becomes clear that crack epidemic was not just a crisis in one city, one community, or one region. It was a nationwide disaster, one of the most devastating social collapses in modern American history. From Los Angeles to New York, from Chicago to Miami, from Detroit to Baltimore, and several other cities around the nation. The crack era left a mark that still shapes American life today. The epidemic surged across the country in shocking speed, especially between 1984 and 1989. Crack cocaine spread through more than 40 major cities in the U.S., hitting urban neighborhoods already weakened by decades of economic disadvancement and racial segregation, factory closures, and systematic inequality. By the late 80s, an estimated 6 million Americans had either used crack or been affected by someone who did. It wasn't just a drug. It was a force that tore through households, blocks, schools, streets, and entire generations. Still, the scars of crack remain, and in 2026, many of the same neighborhoods hit the hardest in the 1980s still face the same long-term consequences. Higher incarceration rates, higher poverty rates, higher violence exposure, strained mental health, generational trauma, and broken trust in institutions. The crack epidemic didn't just break individuals, it reshaped entire regions of the country. It left wounds so deep, some are still healing more than 35 years later. This will conclude this episode.
I don't care what nobody say. People will talk all of this shit about white people, but at the end of the day, it's not about white people, bro. It's about us people, and we gotta do better. We gotta do better with protecting each other. We gotta do better with loving each other. We gotta do better with caring for each other. We gotta do better with looking out for each other. Stop acting like you don't give a fuck about one another. Stop acting like you don't give a fuck about the youth. Stop acting like you don't give a fuck about that little girl down the street. Stop being a grown ass man trying to talk to these young ass women. Stop being a motherfucking nigga that can't be accountable for his actions as a grown ass man. Stop being a bitch and get on your shit. Okay? I don't give a fuck who get mad at me cursing. At the end of the day, it's a lot of things that fall back on the things that you do and the actions that you create within your own realm. And as far as your society, niggas want to talk that systematic bullshit all day, but at the end of the day, all of that shit don't really matter. It was always about what we did and how we acted and what we created. Malcolm X showed us that. Martin Luther King, whoever you want to name, Huey Newton, anybody, they showed us our actions can make a difference and be a difference maker. Don't be no dumbass and be out here thinking that you don't have a way, or that you can't create a way, or that you can't become something bigger. Because there's always opportunity out there. You just got to go searching. You got to be able to believe in God to give you what you need as far as to survive and move through this world how you need to move through it and navigate how you need to navigate. Don't never sell yourself short. Don't never settle for less, because that's literally what the crack epidemic did. And this is why it's a generational curse, because you have so many motherfuckers still trying to imitate that life and imitate that time frame and imitate the people that came before them and thinking that shit is okay and it's cool. But your broke ass uncle don't got no money after doing 30 years in jail. Your broke ass daddy ain't got no money after doing 30 years in jail, 40 years in jail, 50 years in jail for that murder or whatever he did. None of them big kingpin drug dealers don't have nothing to show for what they did. Big Meech came out broke. Rick Ross came out broke. All these niggas came out broke. Didn't nobody come out with no millions, with no bitches in the background video dancing and shit like that. Like, be real and pay more attention to what's really going on instead of what's being advertised to you. You watch Straight Outta Compton, Eazy-E stopped selling drugs because of all of the shit that was going on around this time. All of the raids and the tanks and all that moving through the hood and stuff like that. These is the things that made him stop selling drugs. His cousin getting killed, that made him leave the game alone completely as far as the streets go. He was still from where he was from, but he didn't represent it like that in that way no more. You got to see what's actually helping you and what's taking you down. If you don't realize what's dragging you down, you're going to always be hooked to that anchor, and you're not going to get nowhere ever. You're just going to be trying to swim, and you're going to continue to drown, but not realizing you're drowning because you can see you can still breathe in this world. But how long you going to be able to breathe for? But y'all let me know what the fuck y'all think. Like, subscribe, and all that other shit. Peace. I'm out.
Put your Kirk hand, these hoes be perking hand. OG told me, but watch your back. Hey, these niggas bound to attack. Gotta know your purpose, understand what worth is. These niggas